I did not have a classical education whatsoever. I think when I was in primary school, it wasn't time yet, and then I left before, the students would have gotten into that in secondary school. And then when I got to the States, I can't remember what we were learning about. I have no idea. I don't have good memory for that kind of stuff, but it wasn't about the classics. I don't think it was until I was in my mid to late teens that Shakespeare got introduced, and it was, purely, Romeo and Juliet, and it was just the basics, and it wasn't a study of Shakespeare. It wasn't a study of the language and it was who is Shakespeare, So when, Bleak House came to me, it wasn't, oh my God, I can't wait to read this because it's Dickens and I have such huge respect for him. It was, I've heard that name somewhere before, not the Dickens, but the Bleak House bit, fortunately. But Bleak House, it was kind of like Bleak House, Bleak House, Bleak House. It wasn't like, oh my God. Actors doing television is a very different thing than actors doing film. And after doing television for 9 years, in order to, sink my teeth into and get into the rhythm of doing film, you need to do film. It's different over here in England. I think that it's much easier to jump back and forth. Judi Dench can move effortlessly between the stage and film and television, and that's brilliant, and why not? But it's not always perceived that way, and so one has to be mindful of, unfortunately, of the way things are perceived, because the way things are perceived dictates the course of one's life. The Bleak House adaptation had already been done by Andrew Davis when they approached me. And it was, BBC is doing Dickens's Bleak House. It's going to be a fantastic production. They're interested in you for Lady Dedlock. I know you don't read television scripts, but it's really well done. Andrew Davis has done a fantastic job. Please just take a look at it because I think you might really like it. Oh, okay. But if I like it, that means I won't want to do it, and that means I'm doing television again. I really don't want to do television. All right, I'll read it. And then reading it and absolutely falling in love with her and falling in love with all of the characters. And then having to decide whether I was going to actually meet with Justin, the director, and Nigel to have the conversation, because I had a feeling that they were going to be able to persuade me to do it. And it wasn't until I had agreed, based on the adaptation, to do the series that I then picked up the book and realised, first of all, what an extraordinary adaptation it was, and also just how wonderful the novel was. But I think it was probably the first time that I was properly reading it. I read it and thought, gosh, this is good. Shame it's on television. No, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And I knew that I needed to ask the questions that I needed to ask in order to decide whether I was going to, take it on. And without a doubt, whoever I talked to, whether it was friends who are actors, British actors, or, getting advice from various people, everybody said, it's completely different, and it's going to be the BBC's big costume drama for the year, and it won't hurt you. One has to know in one's mind that somewhere inside oneself is that character. At least I do. I have to know that it's in there somewhere in order for me to agree to do a role. If I can't find it, if something doesn't click, then there's no real point, I think, in me saying, yes, I'll do that, because somebody else will read it and be able to go, oh, I get that. I can, and what's interesting is that with, for instance, with Lady Dedlock, it was in there somewhere, and I could do it in my head, and I could work on it in my head, and I could work, and not even vocally yet. But all the work that was done in the weeks beforehand in this little area right here, the first time that I actually opened my mouth as her, I think was on set the first day after I got the wig and the clothes on. And it's funny that now I'm saying, I'm feeling absolutely terrified that I can't believe I left it up to the last minute to actually find her voice. I knew where it was meant, but you can't guarantee necessarily that you're going to, because sometimes part of the challenge as an actor is to be able to marry what you have in your head with what comes out of your mouth. And there can be a huge discrepancy. And I've had it before where I, have it in here, and then it's just not the same thing that's coming out of my mouth, and you get so frustrated. And that's partly to do with vocal training and where what kind of control and mastery you have over your voice. But now that I'm actually saying that, or admitting that, so I'm grateful at this moment that when I opened my mouth, I sounded like the person that I wanted to sound like. I remember sitting in the hair and makeup trailer and not feeling like Lady Deadlock until the wig was on. And once the wig was on, then I could start to get into the day and the day's work in a different way. And then it's just enhanced as you put the costume on. With House of Mirth, there was no wig. And so it wasn't quite the same just having one's hair curled and go up. So with House of Mirth, it was more that once the corset and the costume was on. But then I did a film last year where I was in the process of seducing a young man. And he was quite a bit taller than I was. And that's fine when you've got 5-inch heels on. You can get into the 5-inch heels does a lot for you in terms of being able to, walk up to somebody in a seductive way and feel powerful. But in this particular scene, I was straight out of the shower and barefooted, and my hair was wet and frizzy. And for the life of me, I didn't feel like I was that I had the power that I used to have.